Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Career Compass. I'm Aaron Davis, Managing Director of Jarupa, a global search firm. Today, I'm delighted to welcome our special guest, Robin Lewis, to a discussion entitled Humanising the AI Revolution and its Impact on People. Welcome to the show, Robin.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Aaron. Delighted to be with you.
No problem at all. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're a busy chap.
Well, it's great to be here to talk to you today.
Thank you. Well, let's start, if we may, with a brief overview of your career to date and the kind of areas you've been focused on. So a kind of blow-by-blow account, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, of course. I've been privileged to work in the people profession for pretty much all of my career, and I've had a variety of HR leadership roles as well as working in management consultancy. I had a stint with the PA Consulting Group. I was Chief People Officer over at New Look Retailers and the same at CMC Markets. And then most recently, I've been leading HR for Cigna International Healthcare across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I work now as a independent HR strategy advisor. I work as an executive coach, and I particularly focus on the future of work and all things in terms of HR from a strategy perspective.
Thank you for that overview. It does feel to me at the moment as though we're at the intersection of an entirely new paradigm, not to use that overused phrase paradigm shift, but I am, of course, referring to AI and its many applications across virtually unlimited use cases. And so companies are rightly asking, how might we take advantage of the digital future? How might we better enable or supercharge our existing workforces? So I think there is a huge amount of fear out there, and I know that you and I have talked about the McKinsey report recently. If you wanted to elaborate on that.
Yes, actually, it's absolutely right. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anxiety, as well as, of course, a lot of optimism and positive progress in terms of job enhancement and opportunities in the workplace. But I think we need to be really clear that there is a fear as well, particularly around job displacement and the stress and anxiety that can really concern and really
Mm.
can give. Actually, the
I think
report I
there
was
is.
referring to, sorry, Aaron, I'll just come back to that report in a minute because I was reading
Okay.
some interesting statistics. It wasn't actually McKinsey, it was Gartner that I was referring to, and they do some really good stuff in terms of HR and productivity analytics globally. And one of the things that they were looking at is the risk of leaving organizations due to AI anxiety. And that
Mm.
effectively is the question that says, is your job at risk? And if it's at risk, are you worried about it enough to potentially leave your organization? And they had
Mm.
seen that particular statistic go up by a staggering 27% over a
Ah.
2 year period, which is a significant increase in terms of
Mm.
quantifiable anxiety. Um,
Mm.
and they had then tracked that back to the commercials and the potential cost to organizations of attrition, lost time, productivity, and in effect, lost talents from their organizations, significant
Mm.
cost.
And it's a kind of an interesting measurement because it's an anticipatory fear. It's a fear of what hasn't happened yet, but clearly
Yeah.
there's a huge anxiety around that. And I think the counter argument you talked about, which is to look at it as a hugely positive augmentation of skills, freeing people up to do things that are more strategically oriented or things they love, in theory, it probably only goes so far to temper those concerns. Is my observation.
Well, I think it does, but I think it's all about how it's actually managed and how it's implemented, in effect. And this comes back to change management, and particularly if we're going to talk about sort of human resources and the role of HR leaders, I think there's a fundamental opportunity here to involve people in the excitement about the future. Um,
Mm.
and for me, the whole issue of AI augmentation of jobs and how it's transforming work is not just about technology. It's about people, it's about humanizing the change, and it's about keeping people involved, engaged, being part of that fantastic opportunity for change, and really being part of that reimagining and reinvention of the future that is possible at so many different levels. in the
Hmm.
workplace today.
So let's take that topic of transformation, if you like, as an opening question, which would be, how do you see, Robin, AI transforming traditional HR functions? And I suppose as part of
Yeah,
that question, what strategies can HR leaders employ to ensure that these changes do enhance rather than diminish the human element in the
yeah.
workplace?
I mean, it's a great question, but I think that AI has got the opportunity and the potential to transform the entire employee life cycle, or indeed the sort of HR life cycle within an organization. And that goes back to data analytics, people analytics, really understanding the metrics, but really giving the opportunity to get into the talent of an organization and really enhance and enable all of the different processes that we see from the beginning of that life cycle through to performance motivation and ultimately results that are delivered. So, if we're very specific about what that really means, if we look at talent attraction and
Mm,
how we approach that in the market, that's being totally transformed by the ability to really deepen talent pools, to understand talent pools, to really match the right people to jobs, the right skills to jobs, in a much more analytic, data rational, and volume based in some cases way. So reaching talent that previously was untapped for organizations,
mm,
making that whole talent acquisition process seamless and integrated to really enable performance in the business. Um, that's at the talent acquisition end. But then I
mm,
think if we think through to some of the key elements of HR strategy, organization design, for example, and the opportunities for artificial intelligence really to start to enable and improve things like analytics around spans of control, layers of hierarchy, to really get to the optimum design for teams, for organizations, for structures, for functions, and team composition with the right skills. So again, really transforming the way that HR operates at that strategic level. Um,
mm.
and then the other one that
And
I'm
there are,
particularly interested in, because of my
mm.
my work as a leadership coach, is really to dive into learning and development and how artificial intelligence is radically changing and reimagining the future of development.
I think there are so many transformational uh, end results and impacts that
Yeah,
this can bring, particularly going back to one of the points you made, similarly enabling the approach to talent acquisition to take different shapes, different forms, previously untapped, talent pools, maybe being able to find people that are more neurodiverse. We talk about this quite frequently, how to tailor to their strengths, how to make them
yeah,
more comfortable, enable them in different ways. There's a diversity question as well. There's the efficiency and optimization piece, fully remote versus coming into the
oh
office.
yeah,
So there are quite numerous ways in which the technology can improve HR's role and function in talent attraction.
absolutely. And by the way, I don't think it's just about artificial intelligence, because I think as we're reimagining and creating a future of work, which is hybrid, it's global, it's flexible, it's technology enabled, but it's primarily human in the way that we operate. What we're effectively doing is creating a new way of working that's collaborative, that's inclusive, um, that enables talent to really optimize their potential wherever they happen to be within that organization, and bringing in talent pools that were previously untapped, which I think is a great opportunity for businesses globally. Of course, it's not without risk,
Hmm.
but managed well, this is a terrific opportunity for organizations and for leaders to really optimize their workforce and their organizations.
We talked a little bit there about AI being increasingly used in recruitment. So I suppose one of the questions around that might be, what measures could HR teams take to ensure that these tools continue to promote diversity and inclusion rather
Yeah,
than perpetuate existing biases? Because of course there have been some
yeah.
reports about a natural bias on the part of AI. As things stand, I'm sure there are improvements being made, but what's your view on
I think it's it.
how that
Yeah,
can be tackled?
absolutely, Aaron. I mean, it's a critical point of governance. It's a critical point of strategy from an HR
Mm,
perspective, or from an organizational perspective, actually, in the way that we design, manage, and implement our artificial intelligence systems. Um, so a lot of it comes back. I mean, if we look at particularly at the recruitment process, to the data that's used to train the AI, the algorithms that are potentially augmenting the decision making process. And I would argue that it needs to be still very human as you move through those different stages. So it's not ideal, is it, at the moment, that if you take a large data set and use that to train a decision making process, an algorithmic decision making process that is potentially open to bias, if that decision making process goes through and is totally driven by machine learning or algorithmic decision making, then I think that that's potentially an area of weakness. So I think in the recruitment process, it's absolutely important to make sure that
Hmm.
the decision making itself is driven by the leaders that are doing that hiring, and that they're fully aware of the risks, and that they're able to look at the broadest base of data, of which the machine learning or the AI driven data is only part. It's only part.
Hmm.
But ultimately, it's a human decision. It's not without
And
its
it's
risk.
key, and I don't know whether you agree, but there's a huge debate going on about let's not lose the human element, the human touch. There was even
Yeah.
a future scenario created recently where candidates using AI to create resumes or at least have a heavy hand in
Oh, yeah.
optimizing the resumes. They were going through to ATS systems that were effectively AI screening tools. So almost like AI kind of
Yeah.
coming, colliding with AI. And I think that that's something that we will see as AI driven tools begin to handle more routine tasks.
Yeah.
It's then a question of what new skills will HR professionals need to develop and nurture to remain relevant and add value in a more automated environment.
So I think that's right, isn't it? And so again, if you focus on the recruitment process, if the AI tools are dealing with the volume, they're parsing hundreds or thousands of resumes and CVs, they're collating the data, they're potentially matching or doing a first match of skills against job requirements. They're prioritizing potential applicants, potential candidates for the roles. But the final sifting and the sorting has to be a human element, and at least there has to be a human input into it to make sure that it is absolutely still rigorously controlled. So I think from an HR skills point of view, it's understanding how the technology works. It's
Hmm.
understanding the strategy behind the technology. It's being data literate as an HR leader to be able to make those decisions. Of course, it's being strategic as an HR leader in terms of really being a champion of inclusivity and diversity where it comes to recruitment and all things organizational, and making sure that that is fundamentally embedded into the recruitment process, and by the way, fundamentally embedded into the algorithms and the artificial intelligence that is augmenting or supplementing the recruitment process itself.
Very, very interesting point. And I think going back to the subject of well-being, so tackling all of that
Yeah.
existential fear and anxiety that exists out there currently, what role do you feel, Robin, does employee well-being play in an AI augmented workforce? And how can therefore
Yeah.
organizations leverage AI without compromising the mental and emotional health of their employees? What is the correct balance to be
Well,
struck there?
and this is a really interesting topic. So employee well-being is a subject that is critically important to employers and has been for a long time. Of course, it was accelerated in terms of its strategic impact in the sort of pandemic years and beyond, but now is getting a real focus again because of the narrative out there, the strategic discussion around artificial intelligence. There's a bit of a paradox going on here because at the one level, technology is a massive accelerator for opportunity from a well-being perspective, and we're seeing, significant advancements in healthcare technology, well-being technology. That much of it is driven by artificial intelligence that is empowering and enabling workforces and employers to actually really support and enable colleagues from a well-being, from a mental health perspective. And there's some great apps out there, and there's some great platforms that are really supportive, everything from wearables through to sort of uh, coaching and well-being and lifestyle that can really enhance and enable employee well-being. So there's a great opportunity out there from an AI perspective.
Mm.
But that's only really
And
the surface, because what I'm particularly concerned about here is that if you go back to this level of anxiety and threat, that's not necessarily going to be helped by giving somebody another app,
yeah.
is it? So that comes back to management, it comes back to leadership, and it comes back to, in a way, the fundamental question here, which is how do we humanize change management in this process, and ultimately form a culture which is supportive. I think if you look at the sort of leadership culture that we want to encourage to enable change, it's not just about introducing new technology. It's about a really personalized approach. It's about people-centered change leadership. It's about engaging and involving people, talking about those fears, talking
Mm.
about concerns, and actually dealing with the real issue, which is, in many cases, this fear of job replacement. And we can
Mm.
do that by proactively addressing concerns, talking to colleagues. We can proactively get into retraining, upskilling, enabling, and the opportunities there are tremendous to really
And I
look at
dare
growth from
say
an
some of
individual
this
point of view. Yeah, sorry.
some of the so sorry, Robin. Some of this comes down to tailoring, the relationships to different, you know, different members of staff. Some people would prefer to have an interaction with an app, a more impersonal, computer-based
Mm,
communication. Some
mm,
prefer the direct human contact, be able to sit down with a cup of coffee and have that discussion in person. So I suspect an element of this is how well the HR leader knows their staff, how
yeah.
acutely aware they are of the personal preferences.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what technology, and particularly AI, is doing, it's enabling personalization of an approach from a well-being point of view and from an employee experience and engagement perspective. So I think it's absolutely right for the chief HR officer, for the HR business partner, to really understand the needs, the requirements deeply at the individual level of how to interact, how to engage, and how to best support colleagues
Hmm.
in the workplace. I think that's absolutely right.
And when it comes to balancing the need for a personal touch versus a more technological solution-based approach, is that affected by the remote versus hybrid work debate? In your opinion, is there a kind of key difference there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had to adapt our leadership and management style to be fully hybrid, to be able to support and engage colleagues, whether it's actually in the office or whether it's remote or whether it's in a global location, and that needs an intentional style
Hmm.
from a manager, from a leader, and actually from colleagues, doesn't it? And again, there's great collaborative technology out there to really enable and to accelerate this.
Hmm.
But again, I would argue that the technology is only one side of it. That's very one dimensional. The human understanding, the listening skills, potentially the coaching skills that I would
Hmm.
advocate would be absolutely part of any leader and manager's toolkit are really what enables success when it comes down to engaging, supporting, coaching, being there with colleagues to
Yeah.
really be able to understand issues and to provide the best support.
That makes perfect sense. And here's an interesting kind of question to put to you. So, in your experience, what are the best practices for preparing employees at all levels to adapt to AI-driven changes in the workplace? And
Okay.
what is the role effectively of HR to facilitate a smooth transition in that regard?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things that come here. One is relentless communication. Let's talk about what we're doing. AI
Mm.
is not something that's in a black box that can just be rolled out, and this is kind of where we're going with it. Engage colleagues right from the beginning. What's the strategy? How are we going to do this? It can be a collaborative, it can be a supportive, it can be an engaging process from the start. Identifying use cases, looking at opportunities, figuring out the appropriate operating model or the appropriate cadence for implementing. So first of all, the role of the HR leader in that is to be able to effectively manage change at the organizational level so that it's all engaging and it's people centered and it's not just about a technology deployment. Now, very tactically, then there's a raft of different priorities to look at. What are the skills required? Let's retrain. Let's find opportunities for upskilling. Let's give people opportunities to really engage. And by the way, you'll find that this will open up fantastic career development opportunities.
Mm,
So that's on the positive side, Aaron. But I would also argue that as the organization changes to really embrace technology, potentially looking at it from a productivity, from a cost point of view, from an organizational workforce management perspective, what about the scenario where they simply don't need as many staff going forward? That's the root of the question. And if you go back to our conversation about fear of job displacement, as an HR leader, how do you deal with that? And again, for me, that's about transparency, it's about integrity, it's about managing a process professionally, giving people the opportunity to retrain, to
mm.
upskill where possible. And then in the event that it means that there aren't so many roles going forward, managing that process to enable a clear transition into either a new role, a new organization, or whatever the outcome may be. But being open about that, being transparent about it, and talking about it, um, I think goes a long way to increasing
Mm.
trust and keeping that growth mindset, that opportunity mindset for all concerned.
And that's an excellent answer, actually. So it really is almost about putting an arm around your people, relentless communication, engage with them, openly communicate the strategy, therefore build and increase trust levels. So it's a very kind of personalized touch, but also allowing for room for recognizing different people's preferences at the same time. So it's a kind of a customized approach
Yeah,
in that regard.
I think it is, Aaron, but it's also about not shying away from difficult decisions. And we're seeing more and more use cases now of organisations that are increasing productivity, that they are significantly enhancing their bottom line profits, and technology is not the only thing here, is it? But as the cost of employment increases, which it still is doing globally, employers will look at ways of mitigating that by enabling technology driven solutions. Now, that's always going to be um, top of the agenda from a strategic organizational point of view, but needs to be handled incredibly sensitively and with a real deep human centered approach from an HR leadership point of view as you manage those organizational changes.
And a final question there is there room potentially for a town hall type scenario here as a forum for communication and taking Q&As?
Oh, Aaron, absolutely. I mean, I mentioned sort of relentless communication, and I believe that through any change scenario, and let's face it, businesses are changing pretty much all the time. Communication should be highly engaging at all levels, whether that's at the team level or whether it's at the organizational or divisional level. The town hall type concept, I think, is absolutely relevant and resonates. Where leaders they can be there with their people, they can be answering questions, they can be really engaging in that dialogue. Absolutely, I would be a great advocate of that type of intervention.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I found the discussion to be extremely valuable, very insightful, and really do appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk to us on this topic, Robin. So thank you
Well,
very much for your time.
well, thank you for inviting me, Aaron. Delighted to talk to you today.
It's a real pleasure, and I'm sure there may be some questions that would follow up from our audience on this. So I will be sure to share your contact details if anyone would like to get in touch with myself or Robin to continue the debate or pose any additional questions. Please do feel free. In the meantime, thank you very much for following, and we will see you again soon.